Hello and welcome to the 11th episode of Let's Play Planet Coaster. We're back here in Project Utopia working on the Rivertown section of the park. We previously finished up the Enchanted Forest and we'll later move on to Metropolis, Wasteland, and the Main Street areas. Right now we're hard at work working on the eastern side of the Rivertown section of the park, as we already wrapped up that central and middle section. Or, excuse me, central and western half. Now, the eastern half is definitely a little more interesting because in the other halves of the Rivertown, it's mainly going to be focused on the carousel and the swing ride, while on this half of the park, I'm really looking to implement roller coasters, which is what you see me doing here. I'm actually, there are two roller coasters in Rivertown, which I think is definitely something that's you see a lot in the real world. You see a lot of these kind of closer, more intertwined roller coasters, which is not something I had tried to implement in this park thus far. You notice that there's two coasters here. The first one is on the left. There is a flying coaster, which is kind of purplish color. It's called Wave, and it is a flying coaster really designed to be kind of a more modern ride with a more modern style. It has pretzel loop, two zero-G rolls, and some other elements that make it really unique. As well as having some in common with some other B&M, common B&M elements on these flying coasters. It's not too tall, it's not too fast. The thrill is not supposed to come from the actual size of the ride. The thrill is supposed to come from the ground level and things of that nature. It also includes two water flybys, so it dives right next to the water, which I think is a really nice element here. The second ride is actually right now it's not really being themed, but it's going to be once we're gonna get into some station work here, and it's actually called the Crypt. And this ride is a much older model. It's actually themed to be an aero looping coaster, which is something that you don't really see a lot anymore in the real world. Or you see more, but obviously Aerodynamics has since gone out of business and is no longer making coasters, thus you're not seeing any new aero looping coasters. So what I really wanted to do here is create a kind of contrast, new versus old. And I think that the newer wave ride with a newer kind of theme, more modern architecture, like you'll notice once I actually build the station's actually open air, which I think is something that you're more likely to see on a more modern themed ride than something like the Crypt, which is going to be, an old cathedral or cathedral-esque kind of area. The Crypt is also going to have a graveyard with the walkthrough, which is definitely not something that's covered in this video, but will be covered in the near future. So a lot of this video, you saw me earlier placing the entrance and exits for both the rides and actually making the queues. So these are the queues and exits that I end up sticking with. But besides, minus the wave queue. The wave queue is actually something that I come back and spend a lot more time on. It ends up turning into a whole kind of Zen garden approach, which I think is really interesting and actually provides a lot to the ride and runs with that more modern approach, which is something that will be covered in a later episode. For now, though, I just kind of zigzagged it in front and left it to be. The majority of the episode is going to be working on this structure, though. This is actually the station for Crypt. I haven't gone through and actually color the roller coaster yet. I'm going to spend a lot of time actually working with some of this old kind of castle-esque style architecture. I really wanted to go for like the high ceiling kind of approach. I wanted to make it look like like how you would envision a crypt to look like. So it's going to have little domes on it and stuff like that. It's going to have big archways, windows with some iron fences, things of that nature. I'm also going to actually, eventually, not in this video, but much later, come back and theme the whole queue around it too. So I wanted the queue to be covered with tombstones and different, like darker grass instead of bright green grass kind of stuff to really help sell the environment. So you see me here as I'm actually placing these station surrounds right now. This is just kind of cuts off most of the ride from the station and really doesn't leave a bunch of, some huge awkward gap, I guess is the best way to put it, for a bunch of space to be seated between the coaster track and actually into the station. Now, one kind of problem I have when doing this is you see here I'm using these big, huge, round arches. The problem with them is I would definitely wanted to have a sort of archway, not just a normal box entrance for the ride to go in and out of. I wanted to have something much bigger and much more elaborate, which is where these big dome kind of structures came around. But the problem associated with that was that they are too big. So there was definitely a person for the person you can just walk off the edge, and then all of a sudden you have a person going splat in the ground after dropping 15 feet. Not what you're really looking forward to in an average day. So what I ended up doing here is, you're seeing me, I'm going to come back and do this in a bit. I'm going to actually put some fences on the side that go right up next to where the roller coaster train goes, just to make sure, again, for that safety feature, as you would see in the real world. Another thing I wanted to add is I have these kind of little smaller arches here. Using for the entrance and exit, but I also have them just kind of lying around, as well as some normal size windows. I wanted to kind of create some diversity and really make the station seem as cool and realistic as possible. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to build kind of some outward jutting structures just to kind of, I guess, further sell the whole castle theme and really give this boxy building a little bit of character and make it a little more special. I definitely had a lot of problem working with all of these different like circle pieces and which ones have bottoms, which ones don't, things of that nature. I ended up settling with these right here, which I think look pretty good. I mean, they're little small discs and they have little bottoms on them too, which kind of makes them fit a little more better with the theme. And yeah, you see me here. I was talking about earlier that I was actually going to go through and I was going to struggle a little bit with actually placing the fences here, so I'm actually going to come up and do that in a second. But right now what I'm here is I'm actually going to take a different approach for this one. So you see I'm going to place that big straight piece and actually connect the two and make a sort of balcony. But it's going to extend all the way down to the ground. So this is actually backward facing, so this is actually going to face the graveyard part of the ride and be a little more sketchy, which I think is definitely kind of the theme I want to immerse into. So people are looking out from the queue, it's actually going to look really nice. So let's continue to talk about some of the stuff that we see going on here. Yeah, okay. Here I was talking about where the fences were coming onto. And later in actually a little bit, we're going to hop into some of the station theming. So I spent a lot of time actually working on some of the interior items at the station because I definitely wanted to make this kind of old time crypty theme really sell. And to do that, I wanted to add a lot of items in it, make it look like it was some old place that not a lot of people have used. Oh, another thing I didn't really mention. Right in the beginning, you saw me actually working on the fake, quote unquote, fake transfer track for the ride, and that was in an effort to kind of have a more realistic kind of approach to move a train off if you're not using it, etc., etc. Though it's just there for pictures in this one. So actually, what I'm doing here is I'm actually theming a bunch of this area. And at this point, I had not called it the Crypt yet, but it was called the Dragon. And you'll notice that I have kind of the Loch Ness Monster from Busch Gardens theme going on here with the yellow track and the green trains to kind of create, like, I don't know, a sort of Loch Ness Monster dragon kind of approach. And it stays this way for a long time until I end up deciding to actually go for that Graveyard Crypt theme. But yeah, essentially what I did is I based a lot of this off Loch Ness Monster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, which I think is a phenomenal ride and possibly one of the better air coasters out there, still functioning to this day. Um, and I really liked how it incorporated the yellow track and it kind of had the water features. And I mean, I was like, hey, I have a very similar thing going on here, so why don't I double it up and do that? Decided against it though. You see me here playing with roofs. I had quite a bit of trouble actually playing with roofs in this one because I was like, I don't know if I want to use one of the traditional castle roofs or do I want to use something older. And I ended up coming up with the Crypt roofs, which seemed rather appropriate and possibly where I got a little bit of inspiration for the name for the ride, as the Crypt roofs actually look like kind of sheet metal and. You see me. I'm about to place them right now. They don't look crappy in any way, but they also are super like upscale to effect where it would really make sense for actual Crypt or old Rivertown-esque environment to have them. So go ahead and putting this on here. Back there you see the train. I'm not sure if I ever highlighted that area. This is East Rivertown is going to follow a sort of rectangular shape. So on the upper half here, we're going to have the two coaster stations, and essentially that's it. Maybe a restroom or something. And then there's going to be two walkways over the train tracks because the train tracks are going to split the two right down the middle. And then so after the two train, so you see the train tracks over there briefly over there on the left of the two pathways that go over it, and then the train on the left side is going to be a coastline, a bunch of that kind of nice thematic stuff, and then it's going to end up going down to the Metropolis area of the park after that. But what I really wanted to do is kind of make the train a more prominent area because definitely in Colonial and so a lot of these older areas, trains were super important as a method of transportation, and a lot of people used them to get goods from one place to another. So I definitely wanted to make the train a focal point at this time because I really felt lackluster not including it as a major one in the other one. You'll see here that I'm actually kind of working on this little crypt structure here that people are going to walk down as part of a queue line. I ended up deleting it here in a second because I didn't really like it that much. Also see me kind of experimenting with towers. What I didn't realize that I think is still kind of a problem playing coaster sometimes is I was actually in the building that I was using to build this wall over there, and I never really realized it. So I'm going to delete this item. I'm going to delete that tower I put on there, and I'm going to realize that a little bit too late before I actually install a new tower after it. So I mean, I think that the structure here was a good idea, and I kind of like that people kind of quote unquote walk into a crypt, but I didn't really enclose the whole corkscrew or anything of that nature. I just wanted to keep it kind of pure and open. So you'll see here, I was going to build it from the ground up. Kind of decided that was a little bit too much, a little too ambitious. and left it short like that. Now, this is kind of wrapping up this episode, and I really think that building this station was a good idea and provided a lot of context to the Rivertown section of the park, especially with the crypt. And hopefully, we'll be back next time to look at a little more work that gets done on Rivertown. So, I hope you had a good time watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.